This week on Painting Lines.
You can be the number one player in the world, but if I always beat you, then am I the best player in the world?
Musetti responded with Zverev thinks I'm passive. He does the same thing. I just wasn't really expecting much from Sinner here.
Ready?
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we covered the first half of the Italian Open, and this week we'll be breaking down the second half. But before we jump in, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and the support means a lot to us. All right, Aiden, since we're talking about the Italian Open, I figured I'd ask if you still have your Italian Duolingo streak going.
100%. Yeah, it's up at like 973 days, nearing the
That
one
is fun.
1K mark.
Yeah, wow. That's like what, just under 3 years?
Yeah, yeah. I started it my senior year of college, and it's been going ever since.
Well, how's it going? Can you speak Italian or what?
Parlo un po' di italiano, ma è difficile. Imparo quando otro persona parlare.
It sounds like you could get by if you were in Rome for the Italian Open. Let's just put it that way.
Maybe a bit.
Maybe a bit. All right. Well, then let's talk about tennis then instead of Italian. How about that?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. Is it fair to say that this has been the best Masters 1000 tournament so far this season with kind of the matchup that we got in the finals?
I think it depends how you define kind of the best, right? Like this was definitely one where I feel like it was the exact type of tournament you like, where the top seeds mainly all made it through. And so we got to see some cool heavyweight matchups later on. But for some people, they don't like necessarily that tournament. They want to see new names. I remember Cole Schultz, we had on a couple of weeks ago, was talking about how he kind of liked seeing some new names pop up. So for him, maybe he liked Miami, where we got to see Mensick have a really cool individual run. So that was probably the most interesting run by one person in a tournament. But I think overall, in terms of just matchups we got to see, like matchups I was excited to see later on in the tournament, it probably was the best overall.
Yeah, I think it's only fitting that Sinner's first tournament back, we get an Alcaraz Sinner final because we've been talking about this moment for, I don't know, 3 months now.
100% as soon
So
as he got
that
banned.
exactly, that was exciting for me. I personally think it was the best just because of, like you said, I like the heavyweight matchups, not too many underdogs later in the tournament, and then obviously the final. That is every tournament director's dream right there.
100%. And it's kind of funny because one of the only sort of underdogs that made it late was a guy that was still a big name in Hurkacz.
Yeah, no, totally. And we'll talk about him later. But speaking of like another Masters 1000 winner, let's talk about Jack Draper real quick. So he reaches the quarterfinals here. He runs into Carlos Alcaraz, who's the number three seed and arguably the best player on tour right now. All in all, though, do you think that this is a successful run for Jack Draper since he finaled in Madrid last tournament?
I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to look down on someone for like losing to not just like a top five guy, but Alcaraz himself. Like he's the guy pretty much, especially on clay, like you were saying.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's more of just unlucky that he happened to face him in the quarterfinal. If maybe he'd been in a different part of the draw, he could have made a semifinal. But overall, I think he played a good tournament and he lost to maybe the best guy in the world. So I'm not disappointed with how he did.
Yeah, no, and the reason I ask about Jack Draper is because we usually tend to see him like final a tournament and then lose the first or second round next week. But this time he actually makes it to the quarters, which is a good sign, a positive sign that he's becoming more consistent on tour.
100%. And hopefully a good sign going into the Roland Garros.
Yeah, totally, totally. All right, let's I feel like we got to talk about Sinner's return. So changing gears here, do you think it was a successful tournament for Sinner? I mean, this is his first time back in 3 months and he makes a Masters 1000 final. He doesn't win it, but he makes the final.
Yeah, I think you got to say it's a success. You look at how he played this week. He didn't have the easiest run either. I mean, he played guys like Sarundalo. He played Ruud. It's like these are not the easiest matchups to have. And he comes in here and not only beats them, but beats them pretty handedly. And then he gets to the final. And yes, he did lose to Alcaraz, but Alcaraz is like the only guy on tour that it seems like has the answer to Sinner's game. I mean, I was looking at some stats, and since the start of last year, obviously he's 85-9 on tour, so practically unbeatable. But he hasn't beaten Alcaraz on tour in that time. He's 0-4. I say on tour in that time because he did lose, or he did beat Alcaraz rather in the Six Kings Slam, but that isn't a tour event. It's just an exhibition. But still, I think that he comes back off of this long hiatus, 3 months, and is just right back on the pace. Beats everyone except this one guy that is arguably the best player in the world right now.
Yeah, did you think he looked stronger out there? A lot of people were saying that, this time off was actually beneficial for him because he got to work on his fitness, like obviously hit the weight room a bit. I think it was like an off season basically,
In a
like
way, I
where
mean,
training wise, yeah.
it's kind of like an off season that tennis players don't even get, right?
He was lucky.
You maybe. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at what a lot of people have to do in their tennis career, and it's you play for what essentially 11 months, right? You start
Yeah.
with the at the beginning of the year. There's these tournaments building up to the Australian Open. You have the Australian Open. You have a little bit of a gap after that, but then you play all the way through until, like, if you're a top player, the end of November is the ATP finals are in November, right? So you get all the way 10 months or so. And then maybe you get 2 months off before you come back. He got 3 months off. So
Hmm.
he maybe just needed that rest. So, like you were saying, could have been a positive.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of talking about whether or not this was a success for him, I personally think this is a super successful tournament for him. And maybe that's because the bar is so low. Like if Alcaraz was suspended, I wouldn't expect him to come back and make a final. Like I just wasn't really expecting much from Sinner here. I feel like because we haven't seen anyone since Rafa, Roger, and Novak, like if one of them took 3 months off, I would expect them to come back and final a tournament. But here, like with these new players, I was happy to see Sinner even make a quarterfinal. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if that's just me under I guess having low expectations for for these players.
I mean, I just think when you look at how well Sinner did last year, and especially coming into this year, winning the Australian Open, it's very difficult for me to see him coming back and losing early just because it's not like he didn't play for 3 months. He didn't play like a match, but he was still training during that time.
Yeah,
I
it
doubt
wasn't
he,
like an injury.
yeah, he had to, like, I think take a certain amount of time off. Like he couldn't train for a good amount of it.
Oh wow.
But
Hmm.
when he comes back, like he's going to be fully ready, I feel like. And that's what we saw. I mean, then again, I can say that after seeing this.
Yeah.
It's hard to retrospectively look back and think about what I was expecting. I probably wasn't expecting necessarily a final. Like I thought he would probably maybe lose to like a guy like Ruud in the
Hmm.
quarters or in the round of 16. I don't know, the semis. Making a final is a good run, but then you kind of put it in perspective and you're like, okay, this guy was almost unbeatable last year. So
Yeah,
it does make sense.
right. And he just sets the bar even higher. The fact that he can come back and pretty much run through all of his opponents in this tournament, except for Alcaraz.
100%. Yeah.
All right, let's follow up on some of the anticipated matches that we mentioned last week. These were all two setters. Aiden, do you think that these matches lived up to the hype? We can go one by one and then just get your take on each. So let's start with Tommy Paul. He finally beats Alex Deminar 7-5, 6-3, brings the head to head to 1-5. And this is a funny story that I heard actually Deminar say after his Dimitrov match where he got double bageled one time, and it was by Tommy Paul in the U.S. Open Juniors semifinal. But now he owns him on tour, obviously 5-1. So I think it's pretty ironic. Maybe there's still some resentment there, but just funny to see that.
Yeah. I mean, it can never be fun to get double bageled by someone. But I mean, speaking on this match, like you said, it wasn't the greatest match. It was two sets, but it was pretty close for those two sets. And I think that maybe we're looking at Tommy Paul as actually the rare American that maybe plays better comparatively on clay than he does than other Americans, let's say, right? Like maybe he's not the best American overall. He's up there, but he is maybe the best American on clay, and that is something we don't see that often.
Yeah, definitely. I think the clay suits his game pretty well. Like he's an excellent mover and hits with heavy topspin. And he even said it in one of the post-match press conferences. He's like, the French Open is the only Grand Slam that I haven't made a deep run in. So I'm really looking forward to this year, 2025, because I feel good about it. And that's reassuring. Like you don't really have any other Americans looking as good as him, as you mentioned, and like being hopeful on a Roland Garros run. Whereas
Yeah.
like Tommy Paul, we could easily see quarters or even semis.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely positive to see that back-to-back years in the Italian Open semis, right?
Hmm.
So I wonder when the last time an American did that was.
That's a great question. I don't know. I want to say so. This is funny on the Nothing Major podcast. They were saying that an American hasn't won a clay title in Europe since Sam Querrey in Belgrade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been a while.
I think Tommy Paul, if he plays one of those lower tier tournaments like a Geneva or Hamburg, like that could easily be
Yeah. I mean, that's
a
the thing
situation there.
is like you look at Tommy Paul doing that and you actually have kind of hope. Whereas you look at Fritz, who's according to ranking the better player playing in
Hmm.
Geneva this week, and the expectations are not that he'll win it, to be honest.
No, sir. And then next up, we got Zverev. He beats Feast 7-6, 6-1. I think this is just the classic case of a very tight, competitive first set, goes to a breaker, but then the person who loses that first set just kind of fizzles out. They're like, you know what? I don't want to play anymore. Let's just get this over with.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like we saw that pattern in a
Yeah.
lot of matches this week where the first set was pretty tight and then the second set was uh, not as close.
Yeah, I mean, speak of the devil, next matchup, Sinner Cerundolo. Sinner was pushed in the first set, went to a tiebreaker, but then does handle business in the second. The score is 7-6, 6-3. Um,
Yeah,
we were talking. This was highly anticipated. This one right here.
yeah, I definitely wanted to see how Cerundolo would do. Felt like a real test for Sinner, and it was a pretty close match overall. I mean, you think about the fact that it did go to a breaker in that first set, and the second set wasn't a complete blowout. Uh, it does give me some hope for a Cerundolo run at Roland Garros because we've seen him do pretty well there in the past. Last year, I think he lost to Djokovic in the quarters or something like that, or maybe it was the round of 16. But either way, he played pretty well there last year, and he's been kind of on fire. And I don't take a Sinner loss as a bad look, to be
Hmm.
honest. So I think it doesn't really break up his momentum.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the fact that he did push it to a tiebreaker in the first like means a lot because before that, Sinner was going through pretty easily.
Cruising, yeah.
Yeah, cruising. And then last but certainly not least, and maybe least, we got Musetti and Medvedev. I think this pretty much went how we expected. I think it was only highly anticipated because of the seeds, like it's Musetti and Medvedev, but Musetti beats him 7-5, 6-4. Pretty uneventful match.
Yeah, I mean, like exactly close, but Medvedev just we know a little bit worse on clay, and honestly, could be worse overall compared to Medvedev or compared to Musetti right now. So it's yeah, I didn't really expect it would have been a shock if Medvedev had won, to be honest.
Definitely. All right, moving on here to probably one of the biggest headlines of the tournament. We got the bagel. Sinner beats Ruud 6-0, 6-1 in the quarterfinal. This was almost a double bagel too. And Ruud was a pretty good sport about it. He after he won that lone game in the second set, he kind of embraced the crowd, like made a joke about it, laughed it off after the match, and just unfortunate to be out there because I seriously think it wasn't a product of him playing badly. I think Sinner was just sharp as hell, like playing out of his mind that day.
100%. I mean, you talk about his reaction. It's like there's not much else he can do. You can either just be insanely salty about it, or you can laugh it off and be like, he was just better that day. And I think that's just Rude's personality, and it's just what the situation was. Right, Sinner was just playing at another level, and Rude was kind of like, I guess I got to just sit back and enjoy the show, or not enjoy the show, but watch it as it's going on.
Take the show.
Yeah,
Take the
exactly.
beating.
Yeah, give a show to the crowd of this is how good Sinner is.
Yeah. Well, and obviously Italian crowd's going to be all for Sinner. When he won that game, the crowd just kind of erupted, like cheered for him and stuff. And he was like, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Pretty funny moment. But what do you think's like worse? I guess getting bageled, but playing really awful and kind of deserving the bagel, or not playing badly. Your opponent just played insane and bageled you. Because it's not like Ruud's like, oh, I had a bad day out there. Sinner just beat him pretty
I
badly.
feel like you gotta say that you hope your opponent played well, right? If you played terrible and got bageled, it's really all on you.
Yeah.
Thinking just in terms of like after the match, how you're gonna feel, right?
Yeah.
If you lose a match and you get bageled or double bageled, you're like, I played absolutely awful today.
Hmm.
You're gonna think about that for a while. If you play Sinner at playing out of his mind, you're gonna be like, well, there's not much I can do against that.
Yeah, I personally would rather get double bageled and be like, "Oh, I played like shit," because I know that's not me. I could do better. But if you're playing great tennis and you get bageled by Sinner, then it's just kind of demoralizing. You know, like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to face this guy for the next 5 to 10 years on tour. It's kind of like him playing Rafa. You know what I mean? Like the match was over before it even started. That's how intimidated Ruud was by him.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like whether you think you're competitive with that guy right now. And to be honest, I don't think Rude is if Sinner's playing well.
No, I don't think so. But speaking of bagels, so Deminar's double bagel against Dimitrov a few weeks ago in Monte Carlo was the first time that this ever happened in a Masters 1000 quarterfinal. And we almost saw it in the span of a couple months happen again. So I feel like this is kind of a testament of today's tennis, like where or how much variability there is in the game with
Yeah,
the players.
I mean, and it would have been another one where the guys in the quarterfinal, it wasn't like a crazy shock run,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly.
Deminar Dimitrov was a matchup where you're like, okay, this could be a close one. It could go either way. Deminar's
Hmm.
probably favored, but and then you see the double bagel, you're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Same thing here. We were like, this could be a real test for Sinner, and
yeah.
it definitely wasn't.
Yeah, last thing I want to mention on the bagel was Fritz had a very funny joke on Instagram. So Rude, he posted a photo shaking Sinner's hand at the net, thanking the tournament, congratulating Sinner, and Fritz commented, "You almost had him" on there,
Yeah,
which I think is hysterical.
100%. I think it would have been also funny to see maybe one of those like tennis TV posts where, so you know how sometimes they post the score and they'll be like, I
Yeah.
can't believe Runa came back in this. I think it would have been hilarious to just like post it and it's like Sinner up 5-1 in the second set. And it's like, you wouldn't believe Sinner won this match.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a great April Fools for next year. Like post it and be like, you wouldn't believe that Rude won this match.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
People are
like
like, no
just
way.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People who don't like follow exactly or don't remember, like, wait, what? And
Yeah,
then you
exactly.
swipe over, you're
Exactly.
like,
Biggest joke of
April
all time.
Fools.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, that would have been a funny idea. But I think Rude could have easily said, hey, well, at least I'm still in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I made a deeper run than you did.
Yeah. All right, next up, we got some drama here. We got Zverev and Musetti. This quarterfinal match had some drama. We got Zverev. He had something to say about Musetti after the match. So he, goes on his usual rant. He started complaining that the balls in Rome are a joke, and then he went on to say, Musetti, and I quote, depends a lot on defense and mistakes from other opponents, end quote, when playing on clay. And then he said the balls made it hard for his aggressive play style, which is to serve fast and hit winners. And then Musetti responded with, Zverev thinks I'm passive. He does the same thing. We've played on other surfaces and the outcome was the same. Boom, roasted. So I had to look this up because it ends up Musetti is 3-1 against him, but the only match that they played not on clay was indoor hard in Vienna a couple years ago where Musetti won. So I don't know how factual Musetti is because he kind of hinted that it happened multiple times when it really only happened one time. But this is just hilarious. Zverev being his usual self, blaming everyone but himself, like when it comes to a loss.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another situation where I feel like you almost want to take the Ruud route and be like, he was just better today. Because
Yeah.
when Zverev talks, he just feels like he sets himself up to not sound great after.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because Zverev thinks he's so aggressive.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
I don't know. Like maybe,
I,
but
I agree with one part of his comment, which is serve fast. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yes, his game is pretty dependent on his serve being really good, but hitting winners, other than the serve, I feel like he's very much a baseline type of guy.
I agree. I agree. And you watched this match because I remember you were texting me like he should have won the first set. Am I
100%.
right? And
Yeah,
then he just kind of
fell apart.
like he got tight, I feel like. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like that's classic Zverev, right? We talked about
Hmm.
this a lot of times where Zverev just, not to take a shot, but he just hasn't shown that he's really a clutch player. He's had moments where he's come back in matches, but when he's playing a top level opponent, he hasn't been able to do that. I mean,
Hmm.
the reason I say he's had moments is because I was thinking of when he played Greek Sport in the French Open last year. He was able to come back in that match, but Greek Sport isn't Musetti. Like Musetti's a higher level player, and Musetti was able to stay in the moment and not, like you said, tighten up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I feel like he's starting to alienate himself more on tour by doing this type of stuff.
Yeah,
Like
and
he's
he
just
already
not
had some
right.
some issues with being alienated. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, I know. All right, next up on the docket, we got Hubert Hurkacz. He makes a shock quarterfinal run here. And I think this is pretty shocking because it's only his second tournament on clay this season. And listen to his previous results. So Madrid, round of 64, lost to Bonzi. Miami didn't even play, pulled out of round 64 with a lower back injury. And then Indian Wells, he loses in the round of 32 to Deminar, which he got bageled in the second set. So those are his last three tournaments, not very good. And then he makes a quarterfinal run here. So I think that this is a positive sign for him because he really hasn't been the same since his meniscus injury last year. And then he's got the lower back. So um, I love when this guy's healthy because he is really fun to watch.
Yeah, I wonder about when that meniscus injury happened. Wasn't he kind of motivated to come back sooner because of what Djokovic did?
Yeah, yeah, Djokovic did in 3 weeks. So I think QB did it in probably around the same, maybe 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, I wonder
He's
if
not quite Djokovic,
that's the
but
situation where, like, obviously he's in top shape. I'm not going to
hmm
make a comment on that, but Djokovic is a different breed when it comes to
hmm
taking care of his health and how locked in he is, even at his age. I wonder if Hurkacz saw that and was like, I'm younger than this guy. I should be able to come back sooner than Djokovic does, or at least in a similar time frame, pushed it to come back. And we've talked about this before where like sometimes one injury leads into another. Maybe he's compensating with, I don't know, his back somehow, and that leads to that injury. Honestly, it just feels like he peaked in Shanghai with that win in 2023 and has overall gone kind of downhill since last year, since that win.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know where exactly he's ranked right now, but I would have to assume within the top 20, 25, maybe.
I think he's maybe around 30. I think that was his seed in this
Jeez,
tournament.
jeez. Yeah, because if I think if there were no injuries, he should be a solid top 10 player.
Maybe. I mean, you look at Berrettini, right? How many times has Berrettini withdrawn recently? When
Yeah, I
Berrettini
know.
hasn't
But I don't think Berrettini
withdrawn
was
for a
ever a
match.
top 10 player, was he?
I mean, he was, I think, right after he made the
Maybe the
Wimbledon final.
Wimbledon. Yeah, yeah.
So I think he was top 10 then, but it's one of those things where you look at Berrettini's matches and when was the last time he lost a match but didn't withdraw from it, right? It feels like it's always he just is like I my body's not going to make it through this match.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad to see. I think he's got to take some time off and then start back up. Like he's trying, I mean, I don't blame him. He's trying to make a living. He's trying to protect his ranking. Like he literally lives to play tennis. That's his career. So it's hard to sit out, but I think at some point you got to rest the body.
100%. Yeah.
All right, and then we got Tommy Paul and Lorenzo Musetti. They make semifinal runs. I think this is worth mentioning because Tommy Paul is starting to look like a European or a South American out there on clay. Like he is making semifinal runs. He's going to be maybe not a favorite to win Roland Garros, but definitely to make a deep run. And then Musetti, he's solidifying himself as a top 10 player on tour. Like this is crazy to see because I never thought that after that injury that he had, when was it? Barcelona maybe, but relatively not too long ago. And I thought we would maybe see a decline in the clay season, but he is proving everyone wrong.
Yeah, 100%. He's solidifying himself as like a really top 10 player. And he's actually hitting new peaks every week. I think he's number 7 in the live rankings, which will be a new high for him. So cool to see. It's kind of funny because last year I think I made a comment that he's played well on the non-hard court surfaces, right? Obviously played really well at Wimbledon last year and has played great on clay. And I wonder whether almost the opposite of an American, he's going to need to improve his game on hard court to solidify himself in that top 10, top 5 area.
Yeah, well, according to Zverev, he just plays super defensive and passive on clay and waits for his opponents to make mistakes. So
Yeah.
maybe he'll switch it up on hard,
Well, I
play
mean,
more
whatever
aggressive.
works, right?
Yeah, I know, winning ugly.
Yeah.
All right, and then the biggest headline of the week was Alcaraz. He completes the Clay Masters 1000 set. He wins the final here in Rome and solidifies himself in the record books as, one of the winners of all these clay tournaments. And I think he'll eventually get it on all surfaces. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the past looking at all these graphics that showed like the big title race between Federer, Nadal, Djokovic as they collected more and more titles. It'd be like, okay, the big title race, Djokovic has X amount of Masters 1000, Federer has this amount, Nadal has this amount. This is their Grand Slam count. This is their gold medals. This is their ATP finals, right? All these things. And now they're already coming up with one like that for Alcaraz versus
Wow.
Sinner. So it's like Alcaraz, I think, now has 11 big titles, and Sinner, I want to say, is around 7, something like that. So it's funny how we're already kind of building up to put them in the record books like that in the same way we did with the big 3.
Yeah, I mean they fill that void. It's what the fans want. Like at least we have something to compare. But speaking of Sinner, he had a 26 match win streak here that Alcaraz broke, beat him in straight sets. And honestly, to me, Sinner felt like the better player in the first set. He even had a few set points there at the end, but he just couldn't capitalize. And then Alcaraz just got it done in the tiebreaker and won the points that mattered. And I think that Alcaraz is just a little more clutch than Sinner. He may not be like on the same level, but he's definitely more clutch, and something that Gil Gross said going into the match before they played was something pretty interesting that really resonated with me. He said that Sinner's the better player, but Alcaraz has not beaten him in the last 3 times they've played. So it's hard to say who's really better, right?
Yeah. It's one of those weird things where it's like, you can be the number 1 player in the world, but if I always beat you, then am I the best player in the world?
Yeah. And then I think he ended up saying like at the end of the day, it'll the best player or the better player will be like who has the most Grand Slams. I think
Yeah.
that's like an even marker. I don't know. But yeah, if you never beat someone, but you have more Grand Slams than them, are you better?
Yeah. It's an argument, right?
It's like a philosophical question.
Yeah. I mean, you look at,
You go on basketball
no,
analogy.
no, because I was going to try and say Andy Roddick with his 1, but he has so many more accomplishments and has
Hmm.
played great and for so long was the number 1 player in the world. I was trying to think of a guy that has won a slam, but is worse than someone that hasn't won a slam, right? And
Yeah.
it's hard, honestly, kind of hard to
What
think
about
of
Medvedev?
Medvedev versus who? Is there a guy where it's like Medvedev has his 1 Grand Slam? Is there a guy that hasn't won a slam? Like, is Medvedev better than Rios? Probably. You have to think of a guy, I feel like, that wasn't number 1 in the world that won a slam.
Yeah, I'm sure it happened a
I
lot
like
more in like the
Vavrinka,
80s
but
and
he won
90s.
3. So it's
Yeah,
like,
you won 3.
I mean, I like Thomas Muster is a guy I was looking at the other day.
Yeah.
He won like 11 Masters 1000 tournaments or something like that and never
Whoa.
won a slam. He was the number 1 player in the world at one point.
Damn.
But you kind of forget about him because he never won a slam.
Yeah. Yeah, the slams, those solidify you in the
100%. I
record
mean,
books.
yeah. But it's I don't know if it's hard because it's such an elite accomplishment. It's really difficult to be like, this guy was better, but never won a slam.
I agree. Well, speaking of slams, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if this wasn't the Roland Garros final right here. I think
100%.
they should be on different sides of the draw, right? One and two, or unless,
Yeah.
because I know
Yeah.
Alcaraz was three coming in. I think Zverev might have been two, but
Yeah. No. Zverev has fallen back, especially because Zverev,
he had
a
to
lot of his
defend.
points were, for from this tournament last year.
Right.
And then Alcaraz goes on to win it. So there's, I think, a pretty big separation now in terms of their rankings. But yeah, you would think this will be 100% the matchup in the final. I don't know what could happen though, because especially with Alcaraz, sometimes he just is off his game, and that can he could go out early to someone. But
Alcaraz could go early, and I'm also, I'd hate to say this, but Sinner's fitness. This is five set format, and he has not played matches in 3 months.
yeah, that is the good question. Like, yes, he was able to come back and dominate in a 3-set format, but he hasn't had the number of matches these other guys have. And it's like there's almost that balance, right? It's like he's had the rest, so maybe he'll come in more fresh. But these
Mhm.
other guys have had the fitness of playing. They're in the middle of their season. They're in mid-season form, so they're good to go for these 5-set matches probably. So yeah, it's a quandary there.
Yep, it definitely is.
But anyway, you ready to hop into segments here?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
So I saw Tommy Paul, he got his truck repossessed while he was in Rome. And I thought this was pretty funny because he's like, oh, yeah, I just missed a couple of payments and made the joke that winning some matches here in Rome helped him get the truck back. His trainer ended up going and picking it up. So he has it back now.
Yeah, that's I guess, a funny situation. Not kind of probably stressful for him, given the fact that he's out of the country, but glad that it all worked out well.
Yeah, he was kind of getting some, not hate on social media, but people were like, dude, you've made like almost $1 million this year in prize money. Like, how are you missing payments on your truck? And it's not
Yeah,
like he's like missing payments on a Bugatti or a Ferrari. It's a Ford F-150, but maybe it's got the full package.
yeah,
Maybe
the
it's
ultimate
maybe it's
American car,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 exactly. I feel like it's super fitting for him too. And he was like really upset because he's like, dude, if anyone knows me, like that truck is my baby. So I am very happy to get it back.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, like, maybe it's just he doesn't have a money manager dealing with that, and he's doing it himself. And then if that's the case, I understand why something like this could happen, because
Hmm.
obviously you get distracted when you're making a deep run at a big tournament. And he's been playing pretty well recently, I feel like. So he's just been distracted with how he's doing on the tour. And then he's like, oh, I missed out on this thing. Maybe he was like, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And then it gets repossessed. He's like, oh, well, maybe later has come.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think he's just very laid back. And then people are saying like, "Oh, you don't get your car repossessed after a couple of payments." Like he must have been missing a lot of payments. And yeah, I think this is right. I think he probably just doesn't have a money manager. And people were in the comments about how like the P PPA, whatever the players union or players association is that needs to get players like better financial advice,
Literacy.
I guess, literacy, yeah.
Yeah.
But at least he got it back.
100%. You want it to just be on top of it. You always worry about some like professional athletes, whether they'll be able to kind of transition after their career, but it's also important to manage their money well during their career.
Hmm. He made the joke he put on social media that he is now on auto pay. He's got auto pay set
Exactly.
up, so will
Yeah,
not be missing any more payments.
exactly.
What about you? What did you see this week?
I saw an interesting kind of YouTube uh, tennis news where Carousel from My Tennis HQ, he has a pretty big YouTube audience, and he has this YouTube series called Turning Pro at 30, where he obviously, like the title says, he's turning professional as a older player that couldn't really financially do it when he was a younger guy, and he's actually making his first main draw appearance in Geneva, which is pretty cool to see. He won his 2 qualifying matches. I think even just getting into qualifying was probably a pretty big deal just because he isn't a super highly ranked guy right now and was able to get those wins. And it's cool to see a small win for a guy like this who's kind of late onto the scene here. And maybe it also gives hopes to someone like Cole Schultz, who we had on and is trying to turn pro right now. And just seeing someone else have that, achieve that goal of playing on the tour, even if it's just this one match. And for better or for worse, he's taken on the headhunter, Fabian Marozsan.
Oh, geez.
So this is an interesting matchup because honestly, Marozsan could come in there and just dominate Caruso. Like we know that on Marozsan's day, he's can compete with the best guys in the world. But we also know that sometimes he just plays down to his opponent's level. So who knows what could happen, honestly.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, I love Crew. I watch him at least once a week. He's got some great like old gems too, just from years ago that I'll check out. But I think this will make some great content too. Like I'm looking forward to next week when he posts a new video talking about like playing a top 100 player. But yeah, best of luck to him. I hope he gets it done.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good match.
Yeah, maybe he'll get some actual prize money this year. Because remember last year he was like negative $20,000.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And I
this is
think
the
just
biggest
this
match of his
main
career,
draw,
right?
yeah,
So yeah,
cool. How about bet of the week? Who are you
uh,
taking? Are you taking him for bet of the week?
I'm not taking a bet of the week.
Plus 425 against Marozsan.
That's pretty big odds, but
That's enticing.
I'm going with an old faithful bet. Altmaier plus 120 over FAA.
Oh man.
I mean, speaking of FAA, there's not a lot of positive to say about him right now. He's on a 5 match losing streak. He hasn't won a match on clay this year. Last week he lost in the, or not last week, but he lost in the Estoril Challenger to Pellegrino, who is a guy outside the top 200. He started off the year so well, and then he kind of hit this doldrums, and he's won 1 match in his last 8 and hasn't won a match in 2 months. So not a great spot for him, especially because he's playing Altmaier, who is actually one of the guys that beat him in one of those 5 match losing streak matches. Altmaier got it done in Monte Carlo. So
Whoa.
there is the argument. It's hard to beat the same guy twice, but with how FAA is trending right now, I'm leaning towards Altmaier here.
Do you think we are responsible for this? Do you think we jinxed FAA in the beginning of the year when he went on that streak, won a couple tournaments, and we were like, is FAA back? Were we too
Yeah.
early to jump
Well,
the
no, I
gun?
think I think with FAA, it's like he's a very specific type of player, is what we've seen pretty much in his career. We talk about like clay rats and guys that only do well on clay and guys that are really threats on clay. Think of guys like Baez, right?
Mhm.
Really, he's a dangerous opponent on clay, but on other surfaces, not as much. FAA is like an indoor rat, if that was a thing, right? It's like, you know, on indoor hard court tournaments, he is a real threat. He's a real contender in these tournaments. And then you go into any other surface, even outdoor hard court, and he's just not the same level, it feels like.
Yeah, they should call that an indoor cat. I feel like that's pretty fitting.
Yeah, the indoor cat, the clay rat, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
what
yeah.
the
Yeah, there we go.
grass dog. I don't know.
Oh man, the grasshopper.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you can't really have one just because it's so
It's
short right
yeah,
now.
100% exactly. How about you? Who'd you go with here?
I'm going with something pretty boring this week. I'm going with a two-leg parlay with some favorites. I got Djokovic and Mahac. Djokovic has Fusovic. He's minus 330. He's 5-0 against him, and he's Novak Djokovic. Not really much to say there. And then Mahac has Nori. He is minus 200 against him. And Mahac should win. I think he's the better player. I know he's the better player, at least at the moment. No disrespect to Nori, but he is on the decline while Mahac is on an upward trajectory. So I think two favorite players or, you know, two expected players get it done here.
Yeah, and what did the odds come? Do you know what the odds came out to on that parlay?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't even mention it was minus 119.
Okay, yeah,
So
so
almost even.
almost even. Yeah, I think the only threat, right, is that Djokovic isn't kind of falls into the same pattern he's been playing with recently. If we see a
Yeah.
Djokovic of earlier this year, I mean, an Australian Open level Djokovic, easy match. And Mahac, I agree. I think he's a better player right now for sure, but hard to be 100% on that one. But I think overall, I like this bet.
I know. I think I'm more confident in Mahac than I am Djokovic.
I feel like with Djokovic, you'll know whether it was a good bet within like the first three games.
Yeah, definitely. And this was a big risk, him taking the Geneva wild card because he is a little injured. I know he's got that knee problem, and then um, just like early exits in tournaments. Like if he early exits here, then that does not set up any great momentum for
Yeah,
Roland Garros because he's a player who needs matches.
but the
He,
argument is maybe he has to enter this because he has like lost what three straight first rounds.
yeah, yeah. Like I guess you're right. He needs a tune-up, and this is exactly what it is. So if he loses, he doesn't get that tune-up. He's going
Yeah,
into Roland Garros essentially cold.
yeah, but does it make it? Can it make him worse? Right, if he's already on this kind of losing streak.
I don't think it can make him worse. It could possibly injure him, but I
Yeah,
mean that's
that
like
I guess that's
any
the only
tournament
risk, right?
though.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like if he's not fully healthy and he just kind of wears it down more.
yeah, 100%. How about a match of the week?
Match of the week, I went with Hurkacz and Mensik. This was a three-set thriller, and it was funny. They were wearing the exact same Adidas kit out there, like hat and everything. It's just Mensik looked way sicker because he wore it backwards, and then Um, Hurkacz just kind of looked a little dorky, with your dad wearing a hat like that type of thing. But I also thought Hubie was a Yonex guy, so he must have made that switch here pretty recently because he's usually wearing the same stuff as Ruud out there. But anyway, I digress. This match, it obviously had massive serving with Mensik and Hurkacz, but it's always fun when I see a big serving match because it always comes down to tiebreakers. Like it just makes the match more tense because it's hard to break the other opponent. So they do tend to go to tiebreakers. They do tend to last a little longer. First and third set went to tiebreakers. And then also Hurkacz is sneaky athletic at the net. Like he moves very well and has amazing touch for a big guy. Like there were points where I pretty much ruled him out once the drop shot was made and I saw him legging it to it and then making like an incredible angle like shot. So credit to him there. And then I really like this match because there was so much variability. As I mentioned, there's like heavy baseline exchanges. There were aggressive point construction where players would set up points and then finish them at the net. And then there was also serve and volleying and then serve plus one. So just not your usual like clay style tennis where people just sit back and hit for days out there. And then the third set was tense. Hurkacz went down in the mini break, but then battled back and won it 7-5. So it came down to just a couple of key points. And something I noticed there on that last match point was Mensik looked super tight. He was hitting the ball very softly, a lot of topspin, and gave QB a short ball that Hurkacz just kind of put away. Not quite a winner because Mensik got his racket on it a bit, but had to dive for it. Wasn't even close. After the match, Hurkacz hopped over the net, helped him up. They hugged each other. It was just great to see that respect that they have for one another after like such a tough battle. And you can just see Mensik, like, you never want to be in that position, man. You just gave it your all. You're all like dirty from the clay. You just lost like in a tight matchup, but great to see Hurkacz back, kind of giving the young guy a run for his money. I'll put
Yeah,
it
I
that
think
way.
Hurkacz might be like the most respectful guy maybe
Oh yeah.
on the tour right now. And yeah, for me, I think matches like this where it's big servers, there's positives and negatives. Like you said, there's the really tense moments. Like the ends of sets become very, very intense. And even the games that are building up towards a tiebreak. But also it almost feels like you get sort of a lull in the match, right? Like at the beginning of a set, you're like, okay, these guys are just going to serve it out for the first five games, the first six games.
Hmm.
And then maybe the returner is going to try to elevate even more to try and get a break. But it's almost like the a balanced match has tenseness throughout, right? And these matches are just like all of the tense moments get shifted towards the end of sets.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What about you? What was your match of the week?
I went with Hachinov and Alcaraz. This was a match that was kind of interesting because we didn't really expect that much from it with all the heavy hitter matchups in the later rounds. We were like, okay, Hachinov Alcaraz, it'll probably just go Alcaraz's way pretty easily, but delivered a three setter, which is unlike all the other ones, which were got done in two. But I think what actually stood out even more was that none of the sets were actually domination. Like in all three sets, both guys got at least one break. And what stood out to me was Alcaraz's ability as kind of a momentum player. We've talked about this in the past, but it showed how beneficial it can be. And I think it's part of the reason maybe that he's able to beat someone like Sinner, because we know Sinner is very calm and kind of collected, has his emotions that he shows every once in a while with a fist pump, but it's not like the big emotional swings where Alcaraz is looking to the crowd and just feeling it out there. And in this match, you look at it right from the beginning, Khachanov gets a break very early on. And at 2-0, he was up 30 love on Alcaraz's serve and has the chance to go up 2 breaks right off the bat. And instead, Alcaraz hits a nice backhand winner up the line and kind of starts feeling the crowd, and then goes on to win 6 of the next 7 games to take the set 6-3. And yeah, respect to Khachanov. He battled back in the second, and honestly, I think changed his strategy a bit, was crowding the baseline a bit more, going to the net a bit more, and it worked. He was able to take that second set. But I think what Alcaraz realizes, he's just too comfortable kind of sitting in those baseline rallies with Khachanov, and eventually was able to just force him back off the baseline. And once Khachanov stopped kind of taking the ball on the rise, Alcaraz was able to just take over the match and ended up closing it out in that third set.
Yeah, it is funny to see that Alcaraz is not afraid to drop a set in a match. He reminds me of maybe like a Djokovic or a Medvedev, where they'll win matches, but the scoreline will be, they'll have lost 1 or 2 sets, depending on if it's a 3-setter or a 5-setter. Whereas someone like Sinner, when they beat an opponent, he dominates his opponent, right? He'll like win either in 2 or 3 sets, whereas Alcaraz, he'll drop a set and lose like 1-6, but then win the match.
Yeah, he'll win in 4
funny.
sets in an early round of a grand slam, and he's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
to someone,
It almost feels like he'll drop a set and be like, yeah, you got your set, but you just use all of your energy. You put so much. It's like, okay, yeah, you're going to get that set, but because of how difficult that set was for you to get and how much you output into that, you're almost guaranteeing you're going to lose the match later on.
Yeah, that just goes back to what we've kind of mentioned before too about the different play styles. Like Sinner is someone who is efficient. He's not flashy. He just gets his job done. Whereas Alcaraz, he's kind of an entertainer out there, and he's not afraid to go for those high risk shots and like be pretty flamboyant too when it comes to playing.
What was that match he had this week? I don't remember exactly who it was against. It could have been the final. It could have been, I don't remember who it was, but he had this shot where he was full run, extends and hits this ball and perfectly lobs his opponent. And it was like, I think it was the final maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
And he does this to Sinner, and you're like, who does this? Like,
Yeah.
It's such an unbelievable shot that he's able to pull out. And I think that's what maybe can impact like the mental of his opponent, is they're like, I should have won this point 4 times. And they don't even have to screw up. Alcaraz just goes, okay, I'm just going to give you an impossible shot back. And they're just lost. They're like, this isn't possible.
Yeah, that reminds me of another point in the final where Sinner like stretched Alcaraz super far out wide and then kind of came in for an easy volley to finish the point, or what should have finished the point. And he didn't put away the volley. He just like hit enough to where he thinks like, all right, against any other player, that's going to win me the point. Alcaraz comes like from out of the frame back in, runs it down, and then I think that was the lob where he just like gets it and then hits the perfect lob. Actually,
Maybe,
now that
yeah.
you're thinking of it, it was insane. But it's just like, yeah, if you're sitting there like, oh, dude, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that maybe the one of the best shots of all time. Remember a couple of years ago when it was Djokovic versus Alcaraz in that Roland Garros semifinal, and Alcaraz hit that shot where he ran and like spun around the ball on the clay, and you're like, these shots just aren't possible for a normal human being, but Alcaraz is able to do it.
Yes, he is. All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.